Hello, 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 hello. I wanted to do a reading vlog reading some banned and challenge books, but I wanted to shorten it to 48 hours. I didn't want to make this like a week-long vlog or anything like that. So I literally just chose 3 titles that I want to see if I can make it through in 48 hours. 2 of them I technically have read. 1 of them I have not read in a very, 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 very long time. So it'll be like reading it for the first time. And we're just gonna go ahead and introduce the books that I have chosen. Okay, so the first one I have is a middle grade graphic novel. Y'all are probably like, why didn't you do a reading vlog for your comic book and graphic novel channel about reading banned comics and graphic novels? Because you know how confused I would be right now. It'd be too confusing. But I did choose a middle grade graphic novel, and that is New Kid by Jerry Craft. Do not yell at me. I know I haven't read this yet. It is critically acclaimed at this point, and Class Act, which is a follow-up, is coming out soon, and there's a 3rd book to the series that is coming out, but I have not read New Kid yet, and so I wanted to include at least 1 graphic novel, 1 comic, and it was between Mouse and New Kid, but I'm almost feeling like I want to save Mouse for our comic book club for next year's picks. Kind of feeling that energy, so I'm gonna go with New Kid. This is about a young black boy who ends up going to a predominantly white school, and he is the new kid of color, and so it kind of chronicles those journeys. This book has been torn to shreds. There was a school district, and I will find all the relevant information because I can't remember what state it was in, but I'll link everything down below. There was a school district that inevitably was having to cancel the program that they had with Jerry Craft coming to the school to speak to the kids because the parents said that this book was pushing critical race theory. My God, talking about being black in a predominantly white school is critical race theory. It's like, girl, it's our lived experience. Like, what are you talking about? So there was a whole news thing about it. So I decided that I wanted to do New Kid. I'm going to physically try to make it through Speak. We'll see how that goes. This will be like my 3rd or 4th time reading Speak. I love Speak. I love Lori Halls Anderson, if I can get her name right. This is about a girl named Melinda who calls the cops during a summer party. No one knows why she really called the cops. And so when she comes back to school, everybody like low-key hates her. And as a reader, you figure out why she ended up calling the cops. And it's a very powerful book because she learns how to use her voice and speak up. And the last one that I'm going to be listening to on audio is Forever by Judy Blume. It has been years since I read this. Like, we gotta say at least like 20 years since I've read Forever by Judy Blume. I don't even really remember much about Forever, but I do have the audio of Forever from Libro FM, so I thought that I would go ahead and listen to that. So hopefully I can make it through these 3 books in 48 hours. We will see. I will be talking about them in great detail. I'll be talking about why they've been banned or challenged, maybe some responses that the authors have had about it. This is just once again another way for us to celebrate and honor those authors in these works, as it is Banned Books Week. I hope you all enjoy this vlog, and I will be back with another check-in soon. Hey y'all, so let's go ahead and talk about the first book that I'm reading for this short 48-hour vlog of reading nothing but banned books. Currently sitting in the car. Gotta make this quick because I gotta go. Anyway, so I started off by reading what's it called? Forever by Judy Blume. I had not picked that book up in years. In years. So I didn't remember anything about it. So I listened to it on audio because I had a copy of it on Libro FM, like I was saying last night in the intro. And yo, this book was wild for the time that it was published, which was in the 70s. It was doing a whole lot. I mean, in the sense that you probably found a generation of people that were definitely more sexually conservative. And not saying that we're not trying to take it back to that age now, but we have 2 teenagers both at the beginning of the novel, 17. Our main character turns 18 before her love interest does. And so they're having sex on page. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but they do have sex on page, and it is explicit. And really, honestly, the basis of the story is that you have two teens who feel like they're in love and they have sex. They don't necessarily understand the emotions that sometimes comes with having sex, especially when it's your first time. And that attachment can lead to you thinking things of your relationship that are not realistic. And so I get what Judy Blume was trying to do with the message of this book, that there's more to sex than just the physical act of it. There's a lot of emotional things that come with it. There are a lot of physical risk, if you're not careful, that come with it outside of pregnancy. And in the author's note at the end, which I'm not sure how long ago she did the author's note, where she was saying, you know, like back in the day, like, you know, the biggest fear about sex was getting pregnant. And now the biggest fear is not only just getting pregnant, but also STIs and STDs and all types of different stuff, the emotional aspects that come with it, understanding consent. Like, there's just a lot more conversations revolving around sex other than don't get pregnant. And I think that while the messaging was good, I think a lot of people, if you go back and you read this, it is very much so of its time in terms of character development. There were some things in there that I consider to be like slightly fatphobic. I did not like our hero. Like, he was frustrating. I mean, he definitely, to me, read very much so like an adult thinking about how a teenage boy would possibly think. And so he was very physically focused, and there were moments when I felt like he pushed her a little too much. So in this, we're seeing it in its time of consent was not a huge thing. So she constantly was saying like, oh, I'm not ready. And there was a section where someone said, you know, you should feel comfortable to be able to say no. But the thing about it is, it's just like the coercion on his end was a bit much for me. Like, I didn't really care for that aspect of it, and where he was like, oh, you're fine, you're ready. And she basically, there was a scene in which she was her body was physically preparing for sex, but she was not mentally and emotionally ready for sex. And part of me just felt like he just didn't respect those boundaries. And so it just really bothered me to a certain degree that he just kept pushing because it was what he wanted. And then the breakup really technically doesn't happen until like the very freaking end of the book. Like, I literally had maybe like 25 minutes left of the audiobook, and then we find that when they go their separate ways for the summer, there's a possibility that she may not feel the same anymore. And so it felt very abrupt in how that fallout happened. And I feel like the novel could have definitely benefited from being a little bit longer. I think that it would have worked if we would have got to see a little bit more about the emotional aspects that's going to be associated with, you know, because that was her first, and, you know, she wasn't his first, but he was definitely in love with her. He thought he was in love with her. And so that breakup was a little on the messy side, and we don't really get to explore the emotions due to that breakup. And so that kind of frustrated me a little bit, because I felt like we should have got a little bit more of that, and we didn't really get that. So that was that. I definitely see the content that people are coming for when they challenge or ban this book. I don't think it needs to be challenged or banned. I don't, because it is giving a somewhat, not more modern, but for the time that it was in, it was challenging these preconceived notions about sex amongst teenagers. And I think that people felt uncomfortable that she was writing teens that were literally having sex on page, and it made people feel uncomfortable. And I think that, once again, here we are. If you don't feel comfortable with like your teen reading the material, that's fine. You are allowed to judge and determine, like, I don't feel comfortable with my teenager reading two teens having sex on page. And so I can respect that. But what I don't respect, once again, as I always say, is parents coming in and saying like, you know, I don't think it's appropriate, so it's not appropriate for any child. Like, you know, stay in your lane and parent your own kids. And that, I don't know if I personally, like, I would not give this to my child when she turned like 13. Like, this is not how I would introduce a conversation about sex. Like, this is not how I would do it at all. And so as a parent, it's kind of like, I see where she's coming from, but I think there's an age in which I would feel more comfortable introducing something like this. Because like I said, in the long run, I think what Judy Blume was trying to say is that sex is more than just two people being physically intimate and getting pleasure out of it. And she does touch on the fact that sex is not good all of the time. I wish we would stop lying. It's not perfect. It's weird. It's goofy. It's awkward a lot of the times. And so she puts that into, and it's realistic. And so it breaks, once again, even if you're a teen reading this book, it definitely breaks that notion of like, oh, you know, it's perfect all the time and it's going to be great all the time. And it's like, no, no. And so I mean, I appreciate that. I still think that, you know, reading this in 2022, there's some aspects of it that are definitely dating it. And so I think I'm going to go with a 3 stars for my final kind of judgment of it. The next one that I plan on picking up that I've already started listening to is A Wrinkle in Time. And I haven't read this one in years either, but I definitely do want to pick that up. I have 2 picture books that I plan on reading within these 2 days that both have been challenged and or banned. The first one is I Am Jazz, which I have read before. And then the next one is The Proudest Blue. So I probably will read those 2 tonight, and I will check in when I have another update for the next banned / and or challenge and or not / and or challenge book that I read next. Hey y'all, so I just wanted to do a really quick check-in. So I just ended up finishing A Wrinkle in Time, which I had not read in maybe 10 plus years, and so it was interesting rereading it again. I don't even really think I need to go over the premise. I think a lot of people are pretty much like familiar with A Wrinkle in Time, but okay, I'll just give it just in case people aren't familiar. But it follows a young girl by the name of Meg and her little brother Charles Wallace as they go on an adventure looking for their dad, who has been missing for several years. I think what was so interesting about this one is that I forgot that it was such a heavy mix of Christianity and also science, like hard science. And so it was very interesting to kind of see like actual biblical verses kind of woven into the story itself. And I don't remember it being like religious in that sense. And I think it's because I hadn't read it in so long and I was so used to basically just seeing the movie adaptations of it that I actually lost the essence of the story itself. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I think right now I'm feeling more of like a mid, like 3.5. Meg is very frustrating to read as an adult, and I get why she's frustrated because of how much she's had to go through with the absence of her dad, but she is a very difficult character to like in some scenes, and it can be just, it's very frustrating to read through her lens. So with that being said, I think that I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest with you. And I think that I was maybe trying to hold the story in the same regard that I did as a child, and I didn't necessarily get the same vibes. Not that it's not a good story, but I think that I definitely had a replacement of what I had been seeing in the movies and what the story actually is. So yeah, about three and a half stars. It's interesting to see why this one was challenged or banned, and I don't understand why any book gets challenged or banned. Once again, I know I said this before with the other books. I don't understand why any book gets challenged or banned, because at the end of the day, like, if you just don't want your child to read something, then just don't let your child read it. And so I know that in the edition that I was listening to in audio, it talked a lot about how much Madeline L'Engle went through in order not only to just get the book published, but how many people have pushed back against the book and how many people have asked, like, for the book to be removed from libraries and stuff like that. And it's interesting going back and reading some of these titles as adults, especially because this book was published in the 60s. I've primarily been reading older stuff. I think for the most part, like what is it, Forever by Judy Blume was published in the 70s. This was published in the 60s. And so it was interesting going back and reading these books as they are, you know, we're talking 20, 30 years later. So that's always fun. Hi. Thank you. I do plan on finishing New Kid within the next couple hours, and then the picture books. But other than that, like, I think that's probably all I'm going to be able to finish for the rest of the day, because this is going to go up tomorrow. And so, yeah. And I'm definitely on my lunch break. So y'all hearing all this extra stuff and hearing me say, like, talking to people and all types of fun stuff, and people watching me like, why is she sitting down kind of talking to her phone the way she's talking to her phone, which is always fun. Hey, how are you? Good. But yeah, so I'm gonna finish up New Kid, and then what I'll do is I'll end up checking in later. Okay, so the lighting is not the best, but I just finished New Kid by Jerry Craft, and it was amazing. 5 out of 5 stars. Easily going to be one of my favorite graphic novels of the year, hands down. I cannot believe I waited this long to read New Kid, and I can't believe that this book has been both banned and challenged. I know that there is a place, I talked about this I think a little bit in the beginning of this vlog, where there was a school where they were getting Jerry Craft to come and visit, and they basically pulled out, told him he couldn't come during school hours because parents were complaining that this book teaches what is it, a critical race theory, CRT. Why couldn't I remember that? So basically they were saying that it teaches critical race theory, which it doesn't. It literally is about this kid, Jordan, who is going to this new school. He is one of the few kids of color at the school, and the amount of microaggressions that he has to deal with from both the students and the teachers is so realistic for a lot of kids of color that end up going to predominantly white schools. And so he struggles a lot trying to find his place in the school. And there's a black kid that goes to the school. They end up being really good friends, but it's hard for them to connect because, you know, it's like, you know, what do we have in common? Do you know, we just be friends because we're the only 2 black boys at the school? And so it's fascinating. Some of the stuff like really irritated me because it's stuff that I've been through, going through private schools and going to a PWI and having to deal with those microaggressions. And it's a real thing. It's someone's experience. And I can't believe, I'm not surprised, but sometimes it's hard to reckon with the fact that people want to ban or challenge books because of someone's experience. It's realistic. It's not teaching kids like, oh, you should feel guilty because you're white. It's teaching kids that sometimes we make assumptions, we have these biases against people because we don't get the chance to know them. And that's exactly what we see in this book. People have these preconceived notions of Jordan, and they don't even really have the opportunity to get to know him until later on in the graphic novel. And when they do, they realize like those assumptions are not right, nor are they fair. I think so many aspects of this really speak to the struggle that even parents, like me as a parent, like having the opportunity for your kid to get a better education, but then also realizing that you're putting them into a situation where you don't want them to lose a piece of them, and basically in this, like, losing your touch with Black culture. And Jordan's father really struggles with that. He's going to this predominantly white school, and him and his parents don't see eye to eye on it. Like, his mom is like, this is the real world, this is what you have to experience, and his dad is like, but I don't want my son to kind of feel isolated. I'm gonna put this down because it's low-key kind of heavy. And I completely get that as a parent, where you want your kid to have the best education, but then you don't want them to experience having to go to a school where they're made to feel different, and it's stressful for them. But at the same time, that's how the world is, and so you don't want them to live in this unrealistic bubble. And it's finding that balance where you don't want your kids to be stressed out, but you want them to experience the real world, you want them to get the best education. And it's sad that best education is often associated with predominantly white schools, predominantly white institutions. It's a lot. Like, I would love to do what I probably will end up doing on my comic book channel, is a full review of this one, because it's just so much of it to unpack. But I'm so glad that I did end up reading it, and I can't wait to read Class Act, which is the second book. And there's a third volume of this series coming out April of next year, which I cannot wait to eventually get my hands on. It's just one that I think that kids really need to pick up. Like, he's in middle school. Middle school is already hard enough, but then when you have to be in middle school and then deal with such tough situations related to race, and people making snap judgments about you, and people stereotyping you, and watching kids who are white really kind of get away with doing stuff that they have no business doing, and it takes other white kids kind of standing up and saying, like, no, you're being ridiculous. And there's a scene where one of the kids almost gets suspended for 2 weeks for standing up for himself against a white kid that was bullying him and actually ended up hitting him, and he was the one that was about to get suspended. And this is stuff that happens. This has nothing to do with trying to make people feel guilty or make people feel bad for who they are and where they were born, but people don't want to acknowledge those things. Parents are afraid of the parents who in administration and people, community, who ban and challenge books like this. They're fearful of the truth getting out. They want to live in this bubble where they maintain power and control, and we don't acknowledge other people's experiences. It's so problematic. It's so problematic because when kids read stuff like this and they see, like, okay, I shouldn't be making judgments about people, you build empathetic kids. And I know I said it a lot, but it's so true. It's amazing that me at 31, I'm able to read this book and connect to it so well, and really feel like I know exactly where he's coming from. I love that Jerry Craft also gave shout out to, like, other creators, this love for comics. There was, a reference to the Amulet series. It was a reference to the Bone series. And just knowing that he's giving these kids who read these books gateways to other graphic novel series to check out. Y'all know I'm a huge proponent for kids being able to read graphic novels and comics, and it's just as valid as picking up any book. And you can kind of see that by making the main character a comic artist and really pouring that love and nurturing into comics and graphic novels. He's opening up the gateway for kids to feel comfortable reading other comics and graphic novels. It just was so well put together. It made so much sense. I love, like, the in between each chapter there was, like, references to movies where he just changes, like, he put some plays on kind of the words. Let me see if I can find one of them. This was so well done. I understand why he definitely has won a Newbery and a Caldecott for this. It definitely makes sense. The artwork is just fascinating. So chapter 14 is named Rad Men, which is a play on Mad Men, and you can definitely, like, even the artwork is a play on, like, the cover of some of these TV shows and movies. And he did such an excellent job, y'all. I cannot praise Jerry Craft enough for what he did with this book. If you've never read New Kid, it's one that I highly recommend. So I have now finished 3. This is the last day that I'm going to be doing this. I have the 2 picture books that I'm going to read. I probably will read those to baby girl at the end of the night if we have time to do that. And I have about an hour and a half left of the Bridge of Terabithia, and then I will check in about those 2 picture books and the Bridge of Terabithia, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap this vlog up. Hey y'all, so I know I'm doing this very last clip outside again, but it just feels so good that I just wanted to come and sit out here and film this last clip in which I'll talk about the last two books that I ended up reading. So the first one that I ended up reading is The Proudest Blue, and this one focuses on a young girl and how she sees the power and beauty in her sister wearing her blue hijab to the first day of school. There is some bullying in this. The coloring is very, very interesting because it really illustrates the difference between the kids that are understanding and really just accept the girls for who they are, and then the students who try to bully them and make fun of them for wearing a hijab. It really illustrates the beautiful relationship between the two sisters. I always get so heartbroken when I see picture books like this challenged or banned, because they're once again stated to do things like, you know, promote critical race theory or make kids feel bad about who they are, or they're promoting one religion over another. And really all it's trying to do is teach kids that, okay, if you see another student that wears a hijab, they're just another student. Like, it's not something to make a big deal about or look at someone and say, oh my gosh, you're so different from me. It's like, okay, yes, they may or may not practice a different religion. They may have different religious practices, but you don't have to other them. And that's the whole point of this. And it's so nice, like, seeing the little sister right here, how she just advocates and fights for her sister internally. She's saying, like, you know, I don't have to whisper about my sister wearing a hijab because, you know, it's not a whisper. It's something that she's proud of because she's strong. And it's, you know, her blue hijab is like the ocean and the sky. They just never go away. Just like our sisterhood, it'll never fade. It's a beautiful ode, and I didn't realize that the author actually had written this with her own sisters in mind, which I think is really, really cool. But I hate seeing picture books like this banned, y'all. Like, it just, to me, it's not logical whatsoever for picture books to be banned that are teaching kids to be empathetic. But what do I know? And the next one that I ended up reading was I Am Jazz, which this is one that I have read before. And of course, this talks a little bit about Jazz Jennings and her journey in trying to get her family and her friends and people at school to understand that she is a girl, even though she was born as a boy. And so we get to see her identify as a girl from a very young age, and her parents kind of getting the education from professionals to let them know that Jazz is trans, and that Jazz overall was having a pretty good experience, but of course she still had to deal with bullies and people who made fun of her and would dead name her, or you're doing things that girls do when you're not a girl. Like, this book really, this is the first time I've read it in a while, like since I've been older, and it really is a picturesque, I don't want to say picturesque, it's not the word, it really is insight to how gendered we are about everything, how everything exists on a binary. Jazz talks about playing with dolls and wearing dresses, and, oh, you can't do that because those are girl things and you're a boy. And I hate that we give gender to inanimate objects. Like, it is the strangest thing to me. Like, as an adult, now that I think about it, now that I've educated myself so much, it's one of those things where it's like, how do you give an inanimate object a gender? You know, you are saying that these things can only be aligned with this gender, and those things can only be aligned with that gender. And it really limits kids. It puts kids in a box. And of course, you know, God forbid, once again, that we illustrate a person, or we have a book that focuses on someone's identity, because, you know, we're brainwashing our kids, and you know, because we're talking about a child that is trans. I don't understand, like, how, and I'm gonna put this down because my arm is hurting. I don't understand how people want these kids to function in society. Like, stop indoctrinating our kids. So what are you gonna do when your kid has never met someone who doesn't look like them, that is not the same gender, sexuality, not the same religion? Like, how are they supposed to function? they're not going to be well equipped to be in situations like that. They're not going to know what to do because you haven't prepared them for situations like that. They have no idea how to function in society with people who are not like them, and it makes for a very ill society. Like, if we can't function, these are the same people who complain about, oh, all this stuff that y'all do, the CRT, identity politics, it just preaches hate, and I love everybody regardless of who they are. No, you don't. Because if you love everybody regardless of who you are, you would respect everybody's story and respect their, you don't even, at the point, you don't have to necessarily agree with everything that people do, but you should respect them. And there's such a lack of respect, and they keep passing this on from generation to generation, and they wonder why the kids can't function, because they're adults that can't function. But I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I'm gonna stop. Those are both 5-star reads for me. Thank you, y'all, for spending this time with me reading banned books. I really appreciate you kind of sticking out with me. It was great to end up reading 5 books in 48 hours that all have been banned or challenged. I would love to do this again next year. Let me know in the comments below if you would like to see this again next year. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notification. Looking for ways to support the channel or follow me on social media, all the links will be down in the description box below, and I'll be back with another video soon.